All right, good to have you back. Today we're talking about arpeggios again. We just finished a video talking about the foundational theoretical concepts. I shouldn't really use the word theory because it's not theory. It's actually the what we use as our language on a daily basis as guitar players and musicians. But at least the foundational aspects of what it is to build an arpeggio. Where do they come from? And what makes what makes one different from another. Okay, so check out that video if you don't already know that foundational stuff. Uh, the material that we're looking at comes from this book here, the Essentials for the Improvising Guitarist, building a functional understanding of arpeggios, and I probably should say and chord forms as well. That the really common chord forms that you've got to know if you want to read through charts. That that are in books like the Real Book and so on. Okay, cool. That's the book. This is the page that we're going to look at today, and there's some background with how these pages are laid out. Now, first of all, the black one simply means the root of the chord, and the numbers are the numbers, the scale degree numbers that the arpeggio comes out of. Let me just take a look at the first one, and I'll show you. So the scale that is not represented here would be right, just the C major scale, do re mi fa sol la ti do, right? And I'm in eighth position, seventh position right now. And so let's take a look at the arpeggio. So the arpeggio, it takes a note, skips a note, takes a note, skips a note, takes a note, skips a note, right? And it does that. So take a note, skip this one in the scale, take a note, skip this one, take a note, skip this one, and take a note, and then it does it in another octave. That's the basis of tertian harmony or harmony that's built in thirds. So let's first of all take a look at the chord. Then below the arpeggio, we have the chord form, that the most common chord form that this arpeggio would be derived from. This is a very, very common rhythm chord. Right, we've got the root on the bottom. The chord, the scale degrees are numbered within the chords to root on the bottom, and then the major seven, the major three, and the fifth of the chord, right? All right. Okay. So now expressing that chord linearly, or I mean, like melodically. This arpeggio all the notes fall directly underneath your fingers. Always use your baby finger and the scale that's underneath that. Okay, I'm assuming you know the scales. You know your scales. This book's about arpeggios. All right. And so now you want to put the arpeggio and the chord together. They are intrinsically associated, right? So we'll get back to that later when we talk about how to practice these. Okay, and the next arpeggio and chord form. Let's start with the chord form down here. Right. And the arpeggio. right. And now, watch the fingering as well. The little numbers that are here beside the larger Arabic numerals, the small ones are the fingerings, and the fingerings are important. I suggest you move to a two finger here because it just makes it easier for you to get to that top major seven up here, right? And that arpeggio expresses this chord, important. And then the next one, open position chord. You don't want to forget your open position, and the open position arpeggio. Like right now, it's open position, but we're going to close that up pretty soon too. And here's the chord, right? Simple major seven chord. All right. And this little diagram here is telling you that when you move that chord up the fretboard, for instance, here's an example of it as an F major seven chord. Right. So we're going to move these around. All right. So now you may ask why these chords and why these chord forms, because they're the most common. And if we went through, for instance, five positions and variations and so on, it would start to get way too cumbersome at the beginning. So I leave those chords for later in the book. And so that eventually we fill up the entire fretboard as we go through the book. But what we want to do is get arpeggios underneath our fingers, these simple arpeggios underneath our fingers, and associate each arpeggio with its chord form, right? So as soon as you put down a chord like this, you underneath that chord, you have your arpeggio. It's just automatic. All right. So how to practice this? I would suggest something as simple as progressions like this: C major, you get the idea. You can make up, and I'm not in time right now. You get the idea. So all I'm doing is just moving the chord chromatically. With not really using a straight 4/4 time, just right. So it starts to give you a feel for moving around the fretboard and listening to these sounds. Now there's a 5 underneath each one of these chords. You may be wondering what that 5 is about. It's because I'm using the root on 5th string chord form. The naming note, in other words, this is a root on 5th string chord. The naming note is on the 5th string. Right? But when we move here to this exercise 3, I've got a sixth at the bottom, a six at the bottom because the root is on the sixth string, right? Like we did up here as a C. Up here, that chord is a C, but if I move it down to here, my root is on the bottom string, and so it's a G. Here it would be an A. Right here it would be a B. And think of these chords as movable. Think of the arpeggios as movable as well. They move along with the chord. So we have a root on fifth string chord. We have a root on sixth string chord. And we also have a root on 5 and 2. So what that 5 and 2 means is we're going to look at it as a root on 2 so they don't get mixed up. It's just like this first one here, right? And if I move that up a fret, right, my root is on the, implied on the second string, or you can look at it as fifth string. So we have moving up, root on second string, implied because I'm not actually playing it, and that's a D, and this is an E flat, or you could look at it on the fifth if you like as well. Same thing, really. And so we have those three chord forms: root on 5, root on 5 or 2, implied root on 2, and root on 6. And so what you're doing with these exercises is you are first of all getting the arpeggios underneath your fingers, which is a bit of work. And before you start with an exercise like this, if you want to move the arpeggios in your practice, you can just do that. Start to do that chromatically. Just up and down the fretboard chromatically. Each time I would suggest you name the arpeggio. Now you may ask, how do I practice arpeggios? And I'm going to pretend you just asked me that. With great accuracy and care, and don't expect an arpeggio to sit in your muscle memory after you've played it 10 times, because it won't. There are certain numbers that you need to play in order to get these things to stick in your head and in your fingers. So, I would say to begin with, start by taking one form and playing it 10 to 20 times. Clean. Don't make any mistakes. As soon as you start making mistakes, what's going to end up happening is those mistakes are going to pop up over and over and over again, like a disease. So please don't rush through this stuff. Take one arpeggio, do it really, really slowly and accurately and perfectly. Perfect practice gives you perfect results. And work your way up to doing these, I would say, 30 to 50 times each. Now, that doesn't even mean that, you do it 30 to 50 times and you're going to have it for the rest of your life. Like, you won't have to practice it for 10 years and you'll still have it. No, that means that get used to a routine that's one of repetition, clean, perfect repetition. And then you'll have these things underneath your fingers to use for the rest of your life, but really, nail them perfectly. These are the elements that make up music. So you can't mess You can't mess with them, and you have to know them backwards and forwards, especially if you want to improvise, right? And that's what we're talking about. You know, the book says for the improvising guitar player. That means for the guitar player that wants to solo over a number of different genres, and this stuff works in all of those genres. So to recap, the page looks like this. It's a little on the dense side. Always be aware of where your roots are. And also, as far as the chords are concerned, the same thing. This is a root on sixth string chord. This is a root on fifth string chord, and this is a root on either five string or string two, right? Uh, and uh, and that will help you to name the chords as you move them around the fretboard. And the scale and the chord should be intrinsically, locked together. They should dovetail together. The arpeggio and the chord. Uh, they're really one and the same thing. The arpeggio is just a melodic representation of the chord, and so they're married, right? So make sure that when you play a chord, any chord you play should have an arpeggio underneath it, or its related scale as well. But again, we're speaking about arpeggios today. So that's a start with the one chord in the key of C, if we want to look at it that way, and just it gives us a place to start before you start moving them around. So C major seven, C major seven, and C major seven. And in each case, you've got the arpeggio underneath those chord forms. We're only starting with three chord forms right now, just to keep it accessible and functional and usable as you move through. All right, that's about it for today. If this is helpful for you, I'd really like to know in the comments below, and please, if you're digging this in any way, just subscribe, and then you'll be hip to all the videos that are coming. And love to hear your comments too, like your ideas and what you'd like to see us, where you'd like to see me go, and that helps us as well and lets us know we're doing something of value here. Okay, thanks. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you real soon for I think we're going to go to the dominant seven arpeggio. All right, see you soon. Bye.